Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. During the Middle Jurassic period, a new lineage of derived Coelurosaurian theropods had emerged, the Paravians, almost certainly originating on the northern supercontinent of Laurasia, probably in what is now East Asia. Ancestral members of Paravians would have been small, heavily feathered and very bird-like animals, perhaps even possessing the ability to fly. Reconstructions of ancestral body sizes for the group have produced estimates of just 65 centimetres or 26 inches in overall length, and weights of between 600 to 700 grams or up to 25 ounces, indicating that extreme miniaturization was ancestral for the clade. Early forms would have likely strongly resembled Archaeopteryx both in terms of size, appearance, and possibly ecological niche, with key anatomical features including long winged forelimb with asymmetrical wrist joints, the presence of a curved sickle-like claw on the second toe which was held off the ground, feathered coats that covered most or even all of the body, including the feet, and curved serrated teeth that indicate generalist omnivorous diets. Like all of the derived Maniraptor and Coelurosaurs, these animals would have also laid colourful eggs in nests that were brooded over by either one or both parents. Early on in their evolutionary history, Paravians diverged into several important lineages, including the stem birds of Avialae, the infamous scythe-clawed dromaeosaurs, and the somewhat overlooked subject of this episode, the Troodontids, while the type genus Troodon itself remains relatively well known, with this controversial animal gaining a measure of fame for supposedly being among the most intelligent non-avian dinosaurs, and appearing in a few works of popular culture. The family as a whole tends to get a bit lost in the shuffle. Troodontids first definitively appear in the fossil record during the late Jurassic, circa 154 million years ago, with members of the group generally resembling their more famous dromaeosaurid cousins, albeit possessing more gracile builds, longer limbs, and smaller sickle claws on the feet. They also tended to have proportionally large forward-facing eyes, well-developed senses of hearing, as well as some of the highest encephalization quotients of all non-avian dinosaurs. All of this indicates that Troodontids inhabited different ecological predatory niches than the dromaeosaurids, being more specialised for hunting smaller and more nimble prey, like lizards, mammals, and hatchling dinosaurs. The most basal known Troodontids were all native to what is now China, which strongly suggests that this is where the group originated. Indeed, the most basal member of the family is generally agreed to have been the genus Cynovenator from the early Cretaceous J-hole biota of Liaoning province circa 125 million years ago. This was a small, roughly chicken-sized animal that measured about 1 metre or just over 3 feet long and weighed approximately 2.5 kilograms. Although both the holotype and paratype specimens represent the remains of subadults that were far from being fully grown. Additionally, there are apparently hundreds of as yet undescribed specimens belonging to this genus, some of which are clearly adults that are over twice the length of the holotype, making Cynovenator one of the larger basal Troodontids. Being a basal animal, this genus shares many anatomical features with dromaeosaurids and basal avialans, including a backward-facing pubic bone, as well as lacking a bulla on the underside of the brain case. In addition to the commonplace Cynovenator, the J-hole biota was home to a diverse array of basal Troodontids, including the very well-preserved Mei Long. This tiny genus measured just 60 centimetres or about 2 feet long as a fully grown adult, being about the size of a mallard duck, possessing a gracile long-legged build with a comparatively short snout, especially when compared to later more derived Troodontids. This animal is famous for the amazingly well-preserved holotype specimen, which was near complete and positioned in a very bird-like sleeping posture, with the head tucked under one of the forelimbs, with the hind limbs folded beneath the body. The exquisite condition of the specimen was almost certainly due to the sleeping animal being incapacitated by carbon monoxide poisoning, and then buried under layers of volcanic ash, which led to the genus name, meaning sleeping dragon. Another basal Troodontid from the J-hole biota, Jinyuan, is important in that it represents the first definitive member of this family to preserve traces of feathered integument, possessing asymmetrical feathers that ran down the length of the tail, forming a frond-like fan. Despite probably evolving in Asia, Troodontids quickly spread to other regions of Laurasia, with the oldest, but interestingly not the most basal genus Hesperornithoides, being endemic to the late Jurassic Morrison Formation of western North America, circa 154 million years ago. I don't know why, but the idea of Troodontids living alongside dinosaurs like Allosaurus and Diplodocus seems pretty surreal to me. Hesperornithoides is known from a single semi-articulated near-adult specimen found at Jimbo Quarry, Wyoming, which is a site famous for producing the massive Supersaurus individual of the same name. The Troodontid would have reached about 1 metre or just over 3 feet long when at full size, possessing a slender leggy build and dwelling in a humid wetland ecosystem, where it hunted for insects, frogs and other small prey items. Another relatively basal North American Troodontid was the genus Gemini raptor, from the early Cretaceous Cedar Mountain Formation of Utah between 139 and 134 million years ago. Known from a single specimen consisting of just a maxilla, this animal probably measured about 1.5 metres or 4.9 feet long, which is quite large for such an early member of the group. By around 125 million years ago, some genera were developing traits that would become more pronounced in later Cretaceous forms, including proportionally longer, narrower jaws and greater adaptations for running, both of which can be seen in Daliansaurus, from where else but the J-hole biota of Liaoning province, specifically the Jinyuan formation. It seems that Troodontids were able to thrive in this relatively cold temperate region during the early Cretaceous, pointing to their raised endothermic metabolisms. Daliansaurus was again about 1 metre long, but possessed notably elongated metatarsals when compared to its relatives, indicating increased cursorial adaptations for chasing down small prey. The holotype also apparently preserved traces of unciate processes on the ribs, which is a feature also seen in modern birds that helps to strengthen the rib cage and the effectiveness of the muscles involved in breathing. Interestingly, some relatively basal Troodontids persisted into the late Cretaceous, including the recently described genus Harena draco from the Campanian of Mongolia, the name of which epically translates to sand dragon. Another late surviving Mongolian form was the genus Almas, also from the Campanian between 75 and 71 million years ago. Named after the Almas, hairy wild men of Mongolian folklore, this animal dwelt in semi-arid to arid ecosystems complete with rolling sand dunes, environments that were incredibly different from the cool temperate forests of the J-hole biota. The shape of its skull and teeth indicate that this animal was probably omnivorous, feeding on small vertebrates, insects as well as plant matter, which would have been beneficial in such an arid and seasonal ecosystem. Another desert-dwelling Troodontid was the genus Byronosaurus, from the late Campanian Jatochka formation, also of Mongolia. This animal measured about 1.5 metres long, and possessed notably elongated narrow jaws, equipped with oddly unserrated teeth, which is unusual for this family of theropods. Given the discovery of 2 embryonic or hatchling specimens attributed to this genus that were found in the nests of the oviraptorid Citipati, it was once thought that Byronosaurus may have been a nest parasite like some modern cuckoos. However, it was later shown that these hatchlings had been washed out of their own nest and drifted down a drainage course until meeting their final resting place. Other basal forms were found at earlier points in the Cretaceous as well, including the genus Hypnovenator, which represents the only Troodontid so far known that was native to Japan. Hailing from the Oyamashimo Formation between 112 and 106 million years ago, the holotype was found in a sleeping position, similar to the aforementioned genus Mei Long. By the late Cretaceous, the major subfamily Troodontinae had emerged, which produced the largest and latest surviving members of the group. These features are typified by the Maastrichtian genus Xanabazar, from where else but Mongolia, with this animal measuring about 2.3 metres or 7.5 feet long, and weighing up to 25 kilograms or 55 pounds, which is larger than all of the other Troodontids that we've looked at so far. In fact, Xanabazar is currently the most massive member of the family known from Asia. However, many members of Troodontinae were also native to North America, with the largest and strangest forms emerging there, such as the recently described genus Xenovenator, from the Campanian Cerro del Pueblo formation of Mexico. This animal was characterised by an unusually thickened and expanded skull roof, which was somewhat similar to those of pachycephalosaurs, although less extreme. This may have formed the basis for a head casque like those of modern hornbills, which are known to ram into each other. Although this type of adaptation is quite odd for a Paravian Mesozoic dinosaur. Now at last we come to the ever-controversial genus Troodon, which is undoubtedly the most famous member of the family, but has gone through major taxonomic changes over the years. It was initially described on the basis of a single tooth found at the Judith River Formation during the 1850s, which has been the cause of much controversy. The first body fossils that potentially belonged to Troodon were found at the Dinosaur Park Formation in Alberta, Canada in the 1930s and late 1960s, being referred to the genus Stenonychosaurus. This became a well-known dinosaur by the 1980s, and served as a basis for a famous life-size model that appeared alongside its fictional speculative descendant, the Dinosauroid. However, in the 1987 study, paleontologist Phil Curry reclassified all late Cretaceous North American Troodontid material under the name Troodon, making Stenonychosaurus an invalid junior synonym. These findings were not universally accepted, and debate continued to rumble on into the 2010s. In 2017, much of the Stenonychosaurus material from Alberta was placed in the separate genus Latenivenatrix. These individuals represent the largest Troodontids so far known, measuring up to 3.5 metres or 11.5 feet long, although it has since been argued that the supposedly diagnostic traits of this genus simply represent individual variations within Stenonychosaurus. Also in 2017, it was argued that Troodon itself was invalid and should be subsumed within Stenonychosaurus. However, in 2025, David Varricchio et al. Argued that Troodon was indeed a valid genus, and proposed that a specimen found at the Two Medicine Formation of Montana should serve as the new neotype. Beyond all this taxonomic wrangling, Troodon was a slender, possibly nocturnal or crepuscular animal with large forward-facing eyes that has frequently been interpreted as a hunter of small prey, although the serrations on the teeth are more similar to those of living herbivorous reptiles, suggesting a potentially omnivorous diet. While the majority of specimens assigned to Troodon have been recovered from Montana and Alberta, remains that have been referred to the genus have also been found at the Prince Creek Formation of Alaska, that date to the latest Campanian and Maastrichtian. This region would have been relatively cold, with a cool temperate climate somewhat comparable to that of modern Vancouver, although with several months of pure darkness during the winter. Teeth attributed to Troodon are far more common here than at warmer sites further south, indicating that Troodontids were able to thrive in cooler and darker ecosystems. In addition, the remains of fossilised eggs and nests recovered from the Oldman Formation have shown that Troodon had a slower egg calcification, akin to modern reptiles but unlike birds, which indicates that Troodon and other Maniraptorans possessed 2 functional ovaries. This would have limited females to laying up to 6 eggs per season, with the high concentration of eggs found here suggesting that multiple individuals would have laid their eggs in the same nest. A similar reproductive strategy is also utilised by modern ostriches. While the eggs were determined to have been laid by a theropod with an endothermic metabolism and a resting body temperature of 42 degrees Celsius or 107 degrees Fahrenheit, this could drop down to as low as 30 degrees Celsius to conserve energy during periods of harsh weather or limited food availability. Meanwhile, another poorly understood genus of Troodontid, Pectinodon, was native to the late Maastrichtian Lance and Hell Creek formations, although it's currently only represented by isolated teeth. So, despite the often scrappy nature of their remains, Troodontids were clearly an adaptable, long-lived group that were able to thrive in a diverse array of different ecosystems, from scorching deserts to cool temperate polar forests. While similar to their dromaeosaurid cousins in some ways, which will be the subject of the next episode, Troodontids staked out their own place in the ecosystem as the dinosaurian equivalents of foxes and jackals, with later forms being partial to omnivory or possibly even herbivory. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Cheerio.